Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, my dear respected and viewers, brothers and sisters. We begin, inshallah, in our lesson tonight by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity for us to continue in our second lesson in the Aqaid of Al-Imam An-Nasafi. And inshallah, in our lesson today, we'll begin by the explanation of the Mabadi asharah of Al-Kalam, that is in the 10 principles of the knowledge of Al-Kalam, so that we have a better understanding on the subject and some of the expectations. But of course, last time when we started in the Aqeedah Bahiyya, likewise Aqeedah Sanusiyyah, and always we begin by the Mabadi asharah, and for those who have covered Mabadi asharah, just regard this as a revision, inshallah ta'ala. So if we have time, inshallah, today we will enter into the Muqaddimah of Al-Imam Taftazani on the commentary of Aqaid Nasafiyyah. As what I mentioned in the previous class, that we will begin the class by us going through the commentary of Al-Imam Taftazani to look at some of the things that he mentioned in the Muqaddimah before we enter into the text of Aqaid Nasafiyyah. And the reason is, as what I mentioned last time, is that there are certain important things that he mentioned in the Muqaddimah, which inshallah ta'ala I wish to highlight. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and tawfiq. So inshallah, now what I did was I did some slides. So we will just go through the Mabadi asharah. What is Mabadi asharah? We call it the 10 principles. So in every knowledge, our ulama mentioned, this is written by Al-Imam Sabban. He mentioned that in every knowledge, as an introduction, we have to understand 10 things. So for the knowledge of Aqeedah, knowledge of Al-Kalam, last week I mentioned I believe I mentioned the definition. So the definition is at the bottom. It is knowledge that enables you to establish the principles of creed, derive from evidences of yaqeen. So there are two things. Number one, in the knowledge of Al-Kalam, we are learning the principles of Aqeedah, the principles of our belief in Islam. So this is the first part of the knowledge of Al-Kalam. And the second part is to understand the evidences. And evidences, they are divided into two parts. We have dalil aqli and dalil naqli. We have rational evidences and we have textual evidences. This is what we studied in Aqeedah Sanusiyyah, the commentary of Aqeedah Sanusiyyah in our last kitab. If you can remember that Al-Imam Sanusi, he divided his book into two parts. Number one is the established principles of faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messengers and Yawm al-Qiyamah and the unseen. And then we have the barahin, the proofs for all of the principles that are mentioned. The third thing about Ilmu Al-Kalam is that it is also part of knowledge where it comes out for argument against those who opposes any of the beliefs of Islam. So the knowledge of Al-Kalam is a tool that are used by our ulama to defend the creed of Islam from being interpreted into misguidance, or when people have wrong interpretations of the belief of Islam, then the knowledge part of knowledge of Kalam is to rebut any false beliefs. So this is basically the definition. I will not go too much speaking about it. Last week we mentioned a few things. Going too deep into the Muqaddimah will cause boredom to a lot of people. Now this is the explanation on yaqeen, because the difference between knowledge of Al-Kalam and the knowledge of fiqh is that knowledge of fiqh is based on the evidences that are zanniya, whereas knowledge of Aqeedah, they are based on evidences any based on yaqiniyah. This is any difference any between ilmu kalam any and al-fiqh. So I give an example here with the meaning any of evidence any based on yaqeen, and is the word, for example, qul huwallahu ahad. Qul huwallahu ahad, and this is any verse any in the Quran. This is based any on qat'iyya, yani qat'iyyatu dalala. It is based any on what you call it, a signification yani that is absolute and necessary, that cannot have any interpretations, any of differences. So it is based any on dalil yaqini, both yani textual we have in the Quran, the qat'iyyatu dalala, and likewise any we have the rational yani argument, which is wajib any aqli, wajib aqli. All this any we studied any in Aqeedah Sanusiyyah. And then the mawdu, any the content any of this knowledge, there are four. Number one, any is the attributes any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sifat. And then we have the attributes any of the prophets and messengers, and then sam'iyat or raibiyat, the unseen any matters. And then lastly any we have any kawniyat, and is based any on like today any people are saying any laws of causation, the laws any of causation, any cause and effect. So this is part any of the chapter any of kawniyat. So these are the four main topics any when we learn Aqeedah or Ilmu Kalam. And then any the fourth, any what is the benefit any of learning any this knowledge? It is ma'rifatullah, knowledge any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the saying any goes, asasuddin ma'rifatullah. Yani the basis any of our religion is to understand our maker, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the knowledge any of Aqeedah, the knowledge any of Al-Kalam, yani it teaches us about our creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this any will bring any a person to success any in this life and hereafter, because we will not be able any to understand any our purpose any in life. We will not any be able any to perform our worship unless any we understand who is any our creator and what are the attributes any of our creator, yani with a correct belief and faith. Then only our ibadah will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything and it goes back into our belief, it goes back into our understanding any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because any that is any the basis any of everything that every Muslim any must understand and get it correct in order for him any to attain the pleasure any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and rewards. So I gave any this example any of a house any with a foundation. So knowledge any of Aqeedah, any it is like the foundations any of a house. So if the foundation any is strong, inshallah any the house any can stand. But any if the foundation any is weak, then nothing any can stand. And then we have any the first any obligation. The first obligation any is ma'rifatullah. This is any the prevailing judgment, the qawl mu'tamad in our madhab ash'ari. What is any the first any obligation? Although any there are some any differences any amongst any ulama, but the accepted opinion any is that the first any obligation is ma'rifatullah. That is any to understand any Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is any to learn the knowledge any of Aqeedah. Then I mentioned this any Ahlul Fatra. Ahlul Fatra are those people any who were present before the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People any like Abdul Muttalib and their parents any of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they are not considered to be mukallaf. And Allah mentioned in the Quran, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. We will not any punish any a community until we send to them any messengers. Any meaning those any communities where there are no da'wah of Islam any reach them, they are forgiven any by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are not considered to be mukallaf. So one any of the conditions any of taklif is that bulur da'wah, that the da'wah of Islam any reaches any a person. Just like nowadays also any we mentioned that if there are people any in certain countries or in certain communities which does not know anything any about Islam, which is almost any impossible any today, but if there is or Islam, they heard about Islam, but they heard about Islam any in a manner where it is wrong any, they get any from information that is false. Our scholars any mentioned they are considered also any to be people who are non any mukallaf, any they are forgiven any by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unless any the da'wah of Islam any reach them and they have seen the truth any of Islam, and they have understood the tenets any of the faith any in Islam, and what the Muslims any believe and so on. Now these people any are mukallaf, and as far as the non-Muslims in our country, all of them are mukallaf. Likewise any in majority any Muslim any countries any non-Muslims any who are living any with Muslims any, these are people any who are mukallaf. Yani the da'wah of Islam any has reached them any by the presence any of Muslims. So these are so many of the things any when we speak any about the obligation any of learning, or the responsibility any of having faith in Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, because any people any will be accountable any Yawm al-Qiyamah to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for their belief. And then any the virtue, it is the most any virtuous any knowledge, the knowledge any of Ilmu Al-Kalam or Aqeedah. It is the most any virtuous any knowledge, because it has relation any with the attributes any of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So anything any that has relation any with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, it becomes any virtuous. So since any this knowledge relates any to explaining about the attributes any of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, it is considered any to be the virtuous any knowledge, and it is considered any to be the first any obligation. That's what we mentioned. The first any obligation that is wajib upon a Muslim is to learn this knowledge. And then before that, we have any the nisbah, the significance any of this knowledge in comparison any with other knowledges. So it is a foundation, whereas other knowledges and is considered to be the branch. It is considered any to be the foundation of Islam. That's what we mentioned also earlier. So the knowledge any of fiqh any is a branch of the knowledge of Aqeedah. Likewise, knowledge of tasawwuf, it is a branch any of the knowledge of Aqeedah. So faith in Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and understanding attributes any of Allah, this is any the main foundation any of this deen. So that is why it is important any to study this knowledge well, and at the same time also to implement any to attain perfection of iman, to have any strong any conviction based any on the knowledge any that has any been learned. So this is how any we can strengthen our iman and our Islam. It is any by strengthening any our faith in Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Then inshallah any everything else any will be easy. Like what our scholars any mentioned, the reason any why we find heavy any to perform the obligations, it is because our iman any is weak. Our faith in Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala any is weak. So when faith any is weak, everything else any will be affected. Our prayers any will be affected, our fasting any will be affected, our actions any will be affected. Everything any is affected any by the level any of iman. And human beings other than prophets and messengers, our iman goes up and goes down. When you perform ibadah, when you obey Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, when you reflect any upon the greatness of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, when you remember Allah and you supplicate any to Him with sincerity, yeah, the iman any will increase. But the moment any we commit sin and ma'siyah, iman any will decrease. So the iman of a person is different any from another person. It is not any of the same any level. Only Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows the strength any of and the iman any of a particular person. So today any in our age, and especially, it is important any for us to find ways on how we can strengthen our any our iman. Nowadays any people talk a lot any about how to strengthen the body, how to beautify the face, how to have any a solid any physical any body, how to refrain any from eating things any that can cause diseases, and how you need to eat well and all these things, which is important. We are not saying any it is not any important, but the reality any is any not many people any are concerned about how are we able any to strengthen our iman. How are we able any to strengthen our iman? The emphasis any of strengthening the physical body any is given far much any importance than the strengthening any of our faith any in Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Whereas any faith any in Allah, it is something any that will give us, all of us, any benefit not only in this life, but even any after death. Whereas any our physical bodies will perish any once any the soul goes out any from it by the coming any of death. May Allah bless us any tawfiq any and hidayah. So this is any we have any two things here. Number one is the virtue of this knowledge. Number two any is the significance in comparison and with other knowledges any in Islam. And the compiler last week also I mentioned there are these two Imams, Al-Imam Abu Hasan Al-Ash'ari and Imam ini Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. So both any Imam and lives in the same age. So, and I mentioned the meaning of the compilation or the compilers or al-muassis. Yani it is to compile this knowledge and to explain with evidences, with clear evidences and giving any of examples. So this is what we meant by the compiler, the one who established this, the one who established this knowledge. So Al-Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari was born there 260, passed away year 324. Whereas Al-Imam Abu Mansur Maturidi was born in the year 233, passed away in 333, and there are about 13 differences between these two Imams. Inshallah, I will cover all of these differences, and inshallah, I was thinking to do it today, but I thought that this should be mentioned at a later stage, not now, because I am afraid that some of you might have difficulty in understanding certain terminology. So inshallah, what I will do, inshallah, when we enter into the text of Nasafiyyah, and then when we come into the places where there are differences between the two schools of thought, inshallah ta'ala, I will explain and give examples. So, and you will find all these differences, there are differences in the branches and not the differences in the foundations and principles. All these things I mentioned, I will not repeat. And then the name, and we have the knowledge of Aqeedah and Al-Kalam. Only there is slight difference between Aqeedah and Al-Kalam. As what we mentioned, the difference is that there are two things. Number one, knowledge of Al-Kalam, it provides rational evidences and also textual evidences. Whereas knowledge of Aqeedah, just Aqeedah alone, and it is just an explanation of the creed of Islam. So knowledge of Kalam, not only it is an explanation of the creed of Islam, but it is backed by evidences, the Barahin. So when you learn for example, Barahin, the text of Al-Imam al-Sanusi, that is Ilmu Kalam in reality. Another aspect of Ilmu Kalam is the rebuttals. When our scholars they write the evidences, and they will rebut the Mu'tazila, for example. They will bring the argument of the Mu'tazila, and they and they will rebut with evidences of the Quran, or evidences from the rational evidences. So this is the nature of Ilmul Kalam. So the names, we have Aqeedah, we have Tawheed, we have Al-Kalam, and we have Usuluddin. And last time they call it Fiqhul Akbar. Fiqhul Akbar. Although nowadays people don't use the word Fiqhul Akbar. Al-Istimdad, derivation, and it is from the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we have the laws of the intellect or rational judgments. So rational judgments is part of the derivation of this knowledge. In the Quran, Allah speaks la'allakum ta'qilun. Allah speaks about aql. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about ulul albab. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafil layli wan nahar la ayatin li ulil albab. In the creations of the heavens and the earth, the coming of night and day, these are signs for those who possess any intellect. The intellect is used to understand the Quran and to understand the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is used to understand the Aqeedah of Islam. And there is no contradiction between Islam and aql, between faith, between belief and the intellect. This is the beauty of our deen. Our religion is not a religion that enforces you to believe in something which is not any logical. So this is the beauty of Islam. You will not find any other religions have any such, because many other religions other than Islam, they are based on blind faith, that you have to believe, even though it is something that is impossible or something that is illogical. So they have this concept of blind faith, whereas in Islam everything is explained, and everything is explained in such a way that it does not contradict the rational judgments. This is the beauty of our deen, because we have to understand the one who sent this religion is the same one who created our aql. So there can be no contradiction between an-naql wal aql. An-naql is the revelation, and al-aql is the intellect which Allah gave to human beings. And this is any the speciality of human beings in comparison any to other beings. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned علم آدم الأسماء كلها. Allah taught any Adam alayhi salam any the names any of things and the characteristics. Now this is any a display any of the superiority any of the intellect which Allah blessed any the children of Adam. So Allah mentioned any to the angels because the angels any mentioned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ يعني how can you create any a being that will cause any bloodshed and all this chaos on the face any of this earth when we are the ones any who are constantly making tasbih and glorifying you any O Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ I know any what you do not know. Then Allah mentioned about the superiority of Adam alayhi salam. That superiority any is al-aql, that is any the intellect. So that is why any Islam any can survive this wave any of atheism or this wave any about all this Western any philosophy. Islam any can engage, and this requires what you call it a deep knowledge any on rational any arguments and how any to rebut any some any of these any philosophies. So we will find any mashallah any those any who are learned any in this knowledge and of Al-Kalam easily any they can rebut any certain any ideologies any not only based any on the textual any evidences but also any based any on the rational judgments. And hukum syar'i any the ruling any of learning this knowledge any is fardu ain, obligatory upon every Muslim any when a person reach puberty. So it becomes any obligatory. So those any who doesn't study, they are sinful. So when we say fardu ain any meaning, it is sinful any for a person any who stays any in ignorance. Just like the knowledge any of fiqh al-ibadah, for example, learning about wudu, learning any about prayers. If a person any does not any study and he lives any 5, 6, 10 years, he is living any in sin, because any this knowledge any is wajib and it is responsibility any for him to study. And then we have any the masail any the chapters which is what you call it discuss any in the mawdu any, although any actually any the chapters any is the same. They are the 4 chapters any the uluhiyat, the nubuwat, and then we have the ghaibiyat, and then lastly any we have any the kauniyat. When it comes into the mawdu is general, this is specific actually. So actually what I mentioned in the mawdu and it should be placed here. When it comes into the mawdu and it speaks any about learning any about the attributes any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, learning any about iman, learning about faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, learning about the characteristics any of the prophets and messengers. And when it comes into the masail, these are the chapters any in detail. So one any is general, the other one any is specific. So these are basically any my slides. We have any all these 10 principles. So now any inshallah what we will do any is we enter yani into the muqaddimah of Al-Imam Taftazani. So for those any who have any the book, for those of you who have any the book, any you can refer to it because there is English translation. The one any I posted any in the WhatsApp group. So this is any the muqaddimah of Al-Imam any Taftazani. So you can read any the biography of Imam Taftazani any in this particular kitab. Also there is the biography. Last week any I mentioned any a few things any about any where he was born. So if you see here yani the translator yani actually placed this biography yani of Taftazani, which you can read any by yourself, any his name, date any of birth, any date of death, And then the place where he studied Ibn Hajar, and he mentioned, I mentioned a few things last week. And then he authored many books, and these are some of the books that he authored, and the most famous books is Sharh al-Maqasid. And then the names and the ulama we should study, and the most famous is Aduddin al-Iji, who passed away in the year 756 Hijriya. That is his main teacher. And then he has many students, and these are so many of his students. So this is is written on his grave, due to the greatness of the knowledge of this Imam. So now inshallah we take this barakah to read the muqaddimah of Al-Imam Taftazani. So he began with the Basmallah, and Basmallah it is based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kullu amrin zibal la yubda'u fihi bi bismillahir rahmanir rahim fa huwa aqta'. It is recommended in Islam when we are performing an important affair, that we begin with the Basmallah, so that we attain blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise it will be cut off from that blessing. This is basically the meaning of the hadith. The meaning of Bismillah, asta'inu billah, I seek assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we have the names Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, and basically it means the bestower of bounties. One is a general bounties, the other one is a specific bounty. So general bounties are bounties that are given in this life of the dunya, whereas Ar-Rahim, Al-Mun'im bi daqa'iq ni'am, it is a specific kind of blessing which Allah blesses the believers Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is one interpretation, simple interpretation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alamun lidhat wajib al-wujud, it is a name of an entity that is whose existence is necessary. So we mentioned last time in Aqaid Nasafiyyah, Sanusiyyah, existence of three types, and we have wajib, mustahil, and jaiz. Wajib is existence that is necessary. Wajibul wujud is existence and is necessary. An existence that does not accept non-existence, whereas mustahil is something that cannot accept existence, and jaiz or possible is something that accepts both existence and non-existence. So this meaning of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So altogether we have five things. We have the ba lil isti'ana, or lil musahaba, and then isam meaning exaltedness, Allah, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ad-Dhat wajibul wujud, and that's what we mentioned. Ar-Rahman, one of the names of Asma'ul Husna that signifies Al-Mun'im, the one who is the giver of blessings. Ar-Rahim is likewise the giver of blessings, but as what we mentioned, the difference is one is a general blessing, the other one is a specific blessing. Then he mentioned Alhamdulillah, all praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alif Lam lil istighraq, it encompasses all types of praises, and praises is as-sana'u bil lisan. The meaning of Al-Hamd is as-sana' bil lisan. It is a praise with the tongue, by speech. So when we use the word hamd, in meaning you are praising with your speech. There is a difference between hamd and shukr. Shukr, not only speech, by your actions also. By your actions. That is why in the Quran Allah mentioned, la in shakartum la azidannakum. La in shakartum la azidannakum. You make shukr to Allah, I will increase you in my blessing. And to make shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only by speech but also by actions, by obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is a form of making shukr, offering gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, Alhamdulillahil mutawahhidi, all praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he is al-mutawahhid, the one who possess the attribute of wahdaniyah. We mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one in number and one in essence. One in number and one in essence. As what he mentioned in the Quran, Qul huwallahu ahad. Ahadiyah refers to ahadiyah fi dhat and ahadiyah yani fi sifat, that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala yani is one yani in number, and he is one in his essence, and meaning he is not any comprised of parts. He is not any comprised any of parts. And likewise any his attributes, and there is nothing other than him that share the attributes any of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and likewise the actions any of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Nothing else other than Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala can give any effect any like the action any of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So when we speak about wahdaniyah, we have wahdaniyah fi dhat, wahdaniyah fi sifat, and wahdaniyah fil af'al. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is al-wahid. Allah is al-wahid al-ahad. Bijalali dhatihi wa kamali sifatihi, yani the exaltedness any of his entity, and his perfection any of his attributes, perfection any of his attributes. So we mentioned yani the entity of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Nobody any can understand any the essence any of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. As the saying and it goes, tafakkaru fi khalqillah wa la tafakkaru fi dhatillah, kullu ma khatara fi balik fallahu khilafu dhalik. Yani think any about the creations of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and do not think about the entity of Allah, fatahlak, any because our mind cannot reach any that knowledge. So learning any knowledge of Tawheed and Aqeedah and Kalam, it is not any about learning any about and understanding the reality of the entity of Allah, but it is about understanding the rulings that is related to the entity of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So this is any the thing that we have to understand, because our mind cannot reach understanding the reality any of the entity of Allah. How can we understand any the reality of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala when we do not understand even the reality of ourselves? Al-Imam Razali, any for example, and he mentioned in Ihya Ulumuddin, he rebutted Zamakhshari. He rebutted Zamakhshari. This is mentioned in Hashia Bayjuri, in Jawhara Tawheed, in commentary of Jawhara Tawheed. Because Zamakhshari sent a letter to Al-Imam Razali asking him about the meaning of istiwa, the meaning of istiwa. So Al-Imam Razali, he mentioned how can you understand the reality of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala when you do not even understand what is the reality of your soul that is baina jambaik, that is yani in you. How can you can understand the reality of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala when you don't even understand yourself? And basically that's what he's saying. And you don't he said that you don't even understand the food that you consume, where it goes, how it went, and how it exit. This is how Imam Ghazali mentioned a beautiful poem. Likewise he speaks about what you call it, the human body, that we do not even understand the function of our bodies, function of our kidneys, function of our livers, but all these things is functioning in us. So if we have difficulty in understanding our own reality, then we will understand that it is impossible to understand the reality of the one who created us. So that is why the saying goes, al-ajzu al-idrak idrak, the inability to understand the realities, that itself is an understanding. And because to understand that you don't understand is at least better than to think that you understand but in reality you do not understand. طيب, these are some مقدمة المتقدس في نعوت جبروتي عن شوائب النقص وسماته. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is free from all naqs, from all shortcomings. He possesses all his attributes of perfection. والصلاة على النبي محمد المؤيد بساطع حججه وواضح بيانه. And salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad al-Muayyad, who is given bisati hujajihi, given all this al-hujjah, hujjah evidences in the form of mu'jizat, wa wadihi bayanihi, what you call is given this what you call it, ability to explain, and which is backed by revelation. وعلى آله وأصحابه هداة طريق الحق وحماته. And upon his family and his companions, the ones who are the guiders, the one who guides to the straight path, tariq al-haq, the path of the truth, and humatihi, the one who protects the path to the path of the truth by bringing forth all evidences, in explaining the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he mentioned wa ba'du, as that which follows. So you can read the translation here. The translator mentioned all praise are due to Allah alone, the one who is al-mutawahhid, attribute every perfect in the tawheed, alone and without partners, with the loftiness of his being and perfection of his attributes, the one who is al-mutaqaddis, free from any imperfections in his qualities of power and majesty, from being mixed with any kind of imperfection or blemishes. Salutations and be upon his Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has been aided with his radiant proofs and clear explanations. And salutations to the family, companions who were the guides and protectors of the path of truth. So the meaning of the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is those from the progeny of Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib, and the companions we have a few conditions. Number one, those who met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and number two, those who believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those who pass away in iman. This is a sahabi. And then he mentioned as what that follows. So basically, wa ba'du, it is a statement, and we call it faslul khitab. Faslul khitab, it is a statement to transfer from one topic to another topic. Intiqal min mawdu' ila al-mawdu'. Intiqal min mawdu' ila mawdu'. This is the meaning of faslul khitab. And usually how we translate is as that what follows. As that which follows. The author is saying that what I've mentioned before this is just the normal muqaddimah. So now I'm going to speak about something else. The topic of what I'm going to write about. So then he begins by saying fa inna mabna ilmi syara'i wal ahkami wa asasa qawaidi aqaidil islami huwa ilmu tauhid was sifati. This is what Al-Imam Taftazani he began with, and he mentioned fa inna mabna, the word mabna, it is like a platform or a foundation where you build on it, because the word mabna comes from the word bana yabni. So mabna is something that is built upon, just like asl, just like the word aslun in the Arabic language, ma yubna alayhi, something that is built upon. So it serves as a foundation. So Al-Imam Taftazani is saying, for verily the foundation of the knowledge of asharah, the knowledge of shara'i. Shara'i is the plural of sharia, and the meaning of sharia here is knowledge whose derivation is from sources of revelation. For those who wants to write this down, please write this down. Knowledge, the knowledge that is based on what you call it. It is knowledge that is based on derivations from sources of revelation. Sources of revelation in Islam, we have the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So knowledges that we derive from the Quranul Kareem, from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the one of the meanings of Sharia, or the plural is Shara'i. The plural is Shara'i. So Sharia and Shara'i is the same, and it's just that one is singular, the other one is plural, because knowledges there are many. We have knowledge of fiqh, which is knowledge of Sharia. We have the knowledge of usulul fiqh and knowledge of Sharia. Knowledge of Aqeedah, knowledge of Sharia. Knowledge of Hadith, knowledge of Sharia. So all this is derived from the sources of revelation. Likewise, ilmu syara'i wal ahkam, the rulings. The rulings when it comes into the wajib, when it comes into the sunnah. This is the knowledge of fiqh. Wa asasa qawaidi aqaidil Islam. Likewise, when it comes into the creed and beliefs in Islam, the foundations of the beliefs in Islam, then he mentioned this knowledge huwa ilmu tawheed was sifat. This is the knowledge of tawheed and the knowledge of the sifat and attributes. Yani in which in this knowledge we learn about the attributes of Allah SWT and the attributes of the prophets and messengers. So now he's speaking about the foundations of the knowledge of Sharia. So once we understood the meaning of Sharia, here is it is knowledge that is derived from the sources of revelation. The foundation of this knowledge is the knowledge of Tawhid. This one basically is saying the foundation of this knowledge is the knowledge of Tawhid and Sifat. Al-Mawsum bil-Kalam. Then he mentioned that this knowledge that serves as a foundation to the knowledge of the Sharia, it is called as the knowledge of Al-Kalam. Later on, inshallah, in the Muqaddimah also, he will mention why it's called Al-Kalam, and there is a history to it. And inshallah, I will mention some of the things, some of the confusions nowadays people are having when they heard the word Al-Kalam. So we have to get our definition right, because otherwise we might be confused by certain things which is based on ignorance. So now he begins by speaking about the knowledge of Al-Kalam. So basically we say Al-Kalam is the knowledge of Tawheed. Al-Kalam, knowledge of Kalam is knowledge of Tawheed or knowledge of Aqeedah. Al-Munji an rayahibi shukuki wa dhulumatil awham. The benefit of this knowledge, he say Al-Munji, and it saves a person from having doubts in faith. Wa dhulumatil awham, and the darkness of al-ham. Al-awham is the plural of wahm. So there is a difference between ash-shak and al-wahm, and in terminology, ash-shak is 50-50, and we say shak. 50-50, and we say shak. Anything that is below 50-50, below 50% is called wahm. Anything that is below than 50-50, and is called, anything that is below than 50% and is called wahm. So we have four things. Yaqeen is 100%. Zon is anything that is more than 50% and lesser than 100% is called zon. And then we have shak, and we see 50%, and then below that it is called wahm. So you say al-munji an rayahi bishukuki. This knowledge, what is the benefit of learning this knowledge? The benefit of learning this knowledge is that this knowledge will protect you and will save you. And it is a savior in reality. This knowledge will save you from rayahi bishukuk, from having any doubts in belief in Islam. And likewise it will save you from the darkness of awham, the darkness of doubts. So having any doubt is like living in darkness. Having doubts is like living in darkness, and it carries any metaphorical meaning. Just like when you enter into a dark room, you cannot see any of the things around you because you are deprived of lights. But the moment you have light, then you are able to see that you are guided. You are guided, and you know there is a danger here. You know there is a table here. You know there is a chair here, because you are guided by the presence of the guidance in the form of the lamp. But if you go into darkness and you be in a state of doubt, and you do not know, maybe here there is a chair, or maybe there is a danger. So what is the thing that will save you? It is a knowledge of Aqeedah when it comes to belief. And then he mentioned فَإِنَّ الْمُخْتَصَرَ الْمُسَمَّى بِالْأَقَائِدِ لِلْإِمَامِ الْهُمَامِ قُدْوَةِ الْعُلَمَاءِ الْإِسْلَامِ نَجْمِ الْمِلَّةِ وَالدِّينِ Umar An-Nasafi. Then he begins to speak about the author of Aqaid Nasafiyyah, that is Al-Imam Umar An-Nasafi. As what we mentioned in our last lesson, and he said wa innal mukhtasara, he said, for verily the mukhtasar of the Imam An-Nasafi, the word mukhtasar is anything that is little in words but deep in meaning. Little in the words, but it carries any deep meaning. This is basically the meaning of mukhtasar. So Al-Imam An-Nasafi, he basically compressed the aqaid and he summarized it from another kitab. This is how we understand this. Al-Imam An-Nasafi, when he wrote any Aqaid Nasafiyyah, he summarized, it is a summary basically. Aqaid Nasafiyyah is a summary from a larger kitab. And that kitab, as what I mentioned in last week, is the kitab of his teacher Abul Mu'in An-Nasafi, the kitab that is called Tabsiratul Adillah. Tabsiratul Adillah, which is an explanation of Kitab Tawheed of Al-Imam Abu Mansur Al-Maturidi. So Al-Imam An-Nasafi, and what he did was, and he summarized the book of Tafsir al-Adillah. This is one opinion. But what is important is that Al-Imam An-Nasafi, and he summarized into a few pages. So he mentioned, وَإِنَّ الْمُخْتَصَرَ الْمُسَمَّى بِالْأَقَائِدِ لِلْإِمَامِ الْهُمَامِ وَقُدْوَةِ عُلَمَاءِ الْإِسْلَامِ. And he praised Al-Imam Umar An-Nasafi by saying that he is the leader of the ulama, the learned Imam, Najmil Millah, the star of religion, and it is his nickname, Najmudin, the star of this religion, Umar An-Nasafi. A'la Allahu darajatahu fi daris salam. They make dua to Al-Imam An-Nasafi. He said, may Allah SWT elevate the status of Al-Imam An-Nasafi fi daris salam, in the Jannah of Allah SWT, because one of the names of the Jannah of Allah is Darus Salam. Names of Jannah altogether we have 7. We have 7. Last time in Aqeedah Bahiyya we spoke about the 7, and the highest is Al-Firdaus. And then we have Darus Salam, and we have Darul Ma'wa, and Jannatu Aden. We find in the Quran, Allah SWT speaks about some names of his Jannah. May Allah make us enter Jannah with the company of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he speaks about this summary of Aqaid Nasafiyyah. He says, يشتمل من هذا الفن على غرر الفرائد ودرر الفوائد. That he mentioned there are certain things that is mentioned by Al-Imam An-Nasafi is something that is rare, that is found in the books, that is not found in other books. And it is a parable of pearls in terms of his benefit, the benefit that a person can derive from learning the aqaid of Al-Imam An-Nasafi. Fi dimni fusulin hiya lid-dini qawa'id wa usul. And then he mentioned in the aqaid of Imam Nasafi, he explained chapters where it serves as the foundations and the usul, the foundations of faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also the foundations of the science of Tawheed. وَأَثْنَاءَ نُصُوصٍ هِيَ لِلْيَقِينِ جَوَاهِرُ وَفُسُوس. And likewise, all these explanations of the foundations of this particular knowledge of Aqeedah, it is also derived from evidences, that is based on yaqeen. And this is as what we mentioned before this, the definition of the knowledge of Ilmu Al-Kalam, that it is derived from adillah yaqiniyah. So nusus hiya lil yaqini jawahiru wa fusus. So it is based on evidences that are based on conviction. So all these things that is mentioned by Al-Imam An-Nasafi, the evidences that come with it is in the form of evidences of yaqeen, and it is the parable of jawahir wa fusus, the parable of rubies, ma'arayatin min at-tanqih wa tahdhib. And it is crafted in a way that it explains to the exact point and in simple terms. Wa nihayatin min husni tanzimi wa tartib. And then he mentioned pertaining to the tanzim and tartib, and it is basically the sequence of how it is written. Al-Imam Nasafi, inshallah, when we look in the text of Imam Nasafi, he begins by speaking about asbabul ilm, the reason of knowledge. And then after that, he speaks about the chapter of uluhiyat. Then he goes into the chapter of nubuwat. So this is the sequence, and most books in Tawheed speaks about. And then Al-Imam Taftazani, then he mentioned what he's doing in this sharh of Aqaid Nasafiyyah. So he said, فَحَاوَلْتُ أَنْ أَشْرَحَهُ شَرْحًا يُفَصِّلُ مُجْمَلَاتِهِ. Then he said that I tried to explain this text of Nasafi in my effort to explain what is general, because there are certain things Al-Imam Nasafi mentioned, Al-Imam Tazani feels that there has to be explained, because it is just mentioned in a general sense. So Al-Imam Taftazani decided to explain it further, and to go into specific details. وَيُبَيِّنُ مُعْضَلَاتِ. And certain things is difficult to understand. So Imam Taftazani, and he mentioned that I will make any the effort and to explain what is difficult, so that any it becomes any easy. Wa yanshuru matwiyatihi, there are certain things, what you call it, any is not any mention, and I will come forth any with the explanations. Wa yudhiru maknunati, there are certain things and it is hidden, what you call it, I will make it any apparent. Ma'a tawjihin lil kalami fi tanqih, and then yani I will explain about those things any that I explain and I put forth, and I will explain and in further any details, and and be more yani specific on certain things. Wa tanbihin 'ala al-murami fi tawdih, and what you call it, to explain any certain any important any aspects that has not any been said, and with those explanations comes any tawdih, yani clarity in explanation. In reality, yani mashallah, yani this the way yani is written, the Arabic, and this is any an old form of what you call it, the Arabic and literature. Yani you find the way yani it is written, yani full yani of metaphorical in reality, yani metaphorical any meanings, and beautiful and in reality beautiful in Arabic, beautiful Arabic language. And one of the things any great any about Al-Imam Taftazani, that he is any imam any in Nahu, imam in Balara, and the quality any of the books, and if you read, that is why any our scholars, what you call it, praise any Al-Imam Taftazani. And it is said that when he passed away, they mentioned that that is any the end any of this kind any of scholarship any that has came to what you call it, by any by any his caliber and the books any that he has any written. Later on, inshallah, if there is still time, any we will just any run through any the translations, and for those you can read further the translation. So basically, this part any of the text of his muqaddimah, he explained yani his work any on the commentary of Aqaid. And then he mentioned wa tahqiqin lil masaili ghibba takririn wa tadqiqin lidalaili isra tahririn. And then he mentioned that he does any tahqiq, any is to bring any evidences on what you call it, on certain masail, on certain issues that has been mentioned by Al-Imam Nasafi, and he brings it and he brings any with it at times, and he say ribban, at times, and he brings any with it any the explanations. Wa tadqiq, any tadqiq any is to bring any two evidences. There's different with tahqiq and tadqiq. Tahqiq any you bring any one dalil, whereas tadqiq any you bring two dalil. Wa tadqiq any dalail isra tahrir, and to bring forth any another set any of dalil and evidences when what you call it, when certain things any are needed and need to be explained much further. Wa tafsir al maqasid, and also yani to explain the maqasid, yani the objectives any of certain things and that is mentioned by Al-Imam An-Nasafi ba'da tamhid, but after yani putting forth an introduction into the subject. Wa taksir al fawaid, and to put more fawaid and in terms of benefit, ma'a tajridin tawiyan kashh al-maqali anil italati wal imlal, and at the same time also trying to be brief and not to be to what you call it, too lengthy. Mutajafiyan an tarafil iqtisad, so it is not too lengthy and it is not too short, so it is al-iqtisad, it is in the middle, in the middle. So al-itnab wal ikhlal, al-itnab is too lengthy, al-ikhlal is too short. So he said that I will my way is al-iqtisad, I will refrain from itnab and ikhlal, to be too lengthy and too short. Then he make dua. He say Wallahul hadi, Allah is the one who guides, ila sabili rashadi, to the path of guidance, wal mas'ulu li nailil ismati was sadadi, and the one whom we ask, who is asked for us to what you call it, to attain protection and to attain what you call it, any guidance. Huwa hasbi wa ni'mal wakil, and he is the one who suffices me and the best of all helpers. So you can read You can get all these any translations. Said indeed, the foundation of the knowledge of Sharia. Then he mentioned the summary, Mukhtasar entitled Aqaid by the great Imam, the leader of the ulama of Islam, the star of Millah. Millah is basically any religion. Imam Najmudin Umar An-Nasafi. Then he said, I've tried to give such a asharah of this kitab, which explains in detail its ambiguous matters, clarifies its intricate matters, spreads wide open its unfolded up matters, and makes apparent and visible its hidden gems. At the same time, focusing on improving its speech and drawing attention to the objective, and when clarifying, establishing the masail with the dalil, going deep into the evidence amidst writing, establishing the dalil of the mas'alah with other dalil. This is the meaning of tadqiq. Explaining the goals and objectives after preparation, increasing the benefits and beneficial points despite brevity, trying to drive away from the treatise unnecessary prolonging and weariness, and then lastly he makes the dua. So inshallah in our next lesson we will go into anwa'ul ahkam syar'iyyah. He will speak about the relation between this knowledge and other knowledges. So inshallah we will go through inshallah. Maybe we need about 2-3 lessons before inshallah we enter into the aqaid of An-Nasafiyyah. So inshallah we will stop here. I believe there is no question. So inshallah we stop this lesson with dua. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma inna nas'aluka al-'afwa wal-'afiyah wal-mu'afata ad-daima fi dini wa dunya wal akhirah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. تقبل الله منكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.